I am fully convinced that the Philadelphia Eagles can win a Super Bowl in 2024 as a run-first offense. I'll get into why coming up next, right here on Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We are brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 back in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com today to get started. All right, so Darnell Mooney, Gabriel Davis, Pat Freiermuth, Cole Kmet, Courtland Sutton, David Njoku, Evan Ingram, Dalton Schultz. Sorry, I thought you were asking me to name all the other players that have or are making the same amount of money or around the same as Saquon Barkley, who's an MVP candidate. Yeah, let those names sink in again. We always say Darnell Mooney, but how about Gabe Davis? Courtland Sutton's fine, right? Cole Kmet, Pat Freiermuth, David Njoku, Evan Ingram, Dalton Schultz, a bunch of mid-tier tight ends and wide receivers. That is the money the Eagles are giving Saquon Barkley, who, crazy enough, as a running back in the year 2024, is an MVP favorite. He's a top 3 candidate with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Like, that is absolutely insane. Say what you will about the running back position, but for the Eagles to be getting Saquon Barkley's production this year at that kind of money, when you remove position, it's highway robbery. Saquon Barkley set 2 Eagles records in Sunday's win against the Rams. 37-20 was the final score. By the way, this is stock up, stock down. I think you kind of assumed I would start with Saquon Barkley, so stock up for number 26. Saquon Barkley's 302 yards from scrimmage. That's an all-time Eagles record for a single game. His 255 rushing yards, that broke LaShawn McCoy's record as well for most rushing yards in a single game. Saquon Barkley had 2 70-plus yard touchdowns in that matchup. What he's doing is historic. In fact, it could be the all-time season for a running back if he continues this pace. He needs to average, to break Chris Johnson's all-time scrimmage yard record, he needs to average 143 yards a game. He's averaging right now a little bit over 149 yards from scrimmage per game. To break Eric Dickerson's all-time rushing yard record in a single season, which is 2,105 yards, he needs 713 yards in 6 games. I don't think that's all that crazy. Saquon Barkley right now, 1,392 rushing yards, 12 total touchdowns. He is number 1 in the NFL in 30-plus yard runs. I mean, Saquon, what he's doing is historic. And it's why, I mean, he has 500 yards from scrimmage in just the last 2 games alone. He's only a couple players have ever done that before, by the way. Walter Payton in 1977. That's how far you got to go back to hit that mark. And before that, it was Ollie Matson in 1954. Again, I'm normally Mr. Pass the Ball, and I always will be. I think to be a consistent contender in the NFL year after year, you have to win off the backs of your quarterback throwing the ball, right? That's where dynasties are born. That's how the best of the best stay the best. But for 2024 alone, I am now fully convinced that the Eagles can win a championship with the current identity of the offense, being a run-first team, being the most run-heavy team in the NFL. As Saquon Barkley's 226 carries, it does lead the league. Because it's a historic run offense. This is one of the greatest combinations of offensive line talent, coaching, and running back talent the NFL has ever seen. I guess you could mention like the 90s Dallas Cowboys. I don't even know like who else really has a good argument to be there with this Eagles team as a complete whole. When you combine Jeff Stoutland with the offensive line and Saquon Barkley, it's a generational rushing attack. It's one of the best, not just the Eagles have ever seen, but the NFL has ever seen. So I truly do think if this production continues that, yeah, they can beat the Chiefs this way. They can beat the Lions this way. They can beat the Buffalo Bills. They can beat anybody. And another reason I believe that is because they're not a run-first team now in spite of the passing game because the passing game is not working. That was the case before the bye week. And honestly, the first few games after the bye, the matchup against Cleveland, the matchup against the Giants. But I am convinced now that the Eagles, if they do need to be a passing offense, they can win that way too. You saw that against Joe Burrow in the Cincinnati Bengals. I think you saw that with Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith against the Jacksonville Jaguars. You even saw that to a degree against the Dallas Cowboys. So I think the passing game has been very good. So they're not running because they can't pass. They're not turning the ball over through the air, and they're one of the most explosive passing units in football. In fact, they lead the league in explosive plays this year. So a lot of that's Saquon Barkley, but a lot of that is the passing game. So if the recipe is you ride Saquon Barkley until the wheels fall off with this offensive line, and then you get explosive plays from the passing game and no turnovers, and Jalen Hurts makes plays outside of structure like he's been doing the last few weeks, he's throwing unbelievable on the run. I think that can win a championship. I really do. Because, again, I know if push comes to shove and they do have to throw the ball, has it been inconsistent this year? Even the last few weeks? Yeah, absolutely. But the Bengals game, the Jaguars game, most of the Cowboys matchup, even against the Rams, I thought if they needed to throw at a high volume, they were throwing the ball really well. Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown were clicking. I thought that was one of Jalen's better games as a passer. Again, he just didn't have to throw much in the second half because Saquon from the first play completely took over the matchup. So they're a run-first team because how can you not be a run-first team when you have a historic rushing attack? With that, on top of the explosive plays and no turnovers, yeah, I think they can win a championship this way, 100%. Is this what I want every single year? No, I don't think it's sustainable. But for this year, absolutely. And again, there's so many aspects to what makes a football team good and why things work out in a season and why things don't. And there's a lot of other issues I think this team still has. But if you do what the Eagles are doing right now, which is leading the league in explosive plays and leading the league in the least amount of explosive plays you're giving up on defense, I don't really care about any other issues you have. You're going to win a lot of games that way. You're going to be a title contender if you're number one in explosive plays and number one in explosive plays given up. And again, Saquon is so much of that. That's, again, a huge difference. It's not like even Derrick Henry and the Baltimore Ravens where it's death by 1,000 paper cuts, just physical, in-your-face, play after play, and just wearing a team down. The Eagles do that, but they've always done that. Saquon, it's the explosive plays that are why you have to continue to run through number 26. He has 6 20-plus yard touchdowns this year. 12 teams have fewer combined. Saquon has more 20-plus yard touchdowns than 12 teams do overall. He leads the league in 30-plus yard runs, 40-plus yard runs, 50-yard runs, 60, 70-yarders. I mean, a defense almost has to win at the point of attack against this offensive line immediately. If Saquon gets 5-10 yards of cushion, it's almost guaranteed to be a 20-plus yard play. And how do defensive lines consistently win at the point of attack against this offensive line? You can't do it. And if you want to stack the box, okay, good luck. The Rams had 8-plus men in the box 34.6% of the time on Sunday. Saquon averaged 12.7 yards a carry in those spots. And then if you're going to stack the box like that, you're going to have man single coverage on A.J. Brown, who's the best single coverage receiver in football. So good luck. I mean, this is a perfect balanced offense right now. It's almost impossible to stop. I don't know how you game plan for it. I would hate to be a defensive coordinator. The only thing the Eagles need to make sure is that Saquon Barkley stays healthy the rest of the way. Because, look, in 4 of the last 5 games, he's had over 20 carries. He has 115 carries in the last 5 games. Saquon looks healthy and more explosive than ever, and you got to continue to ride that hot hand. But at the same time, he has an injury history. You do want to make sure he's ready to go for the postseason. So that's one thing, is make sure he stays healthy. But yeah, I'm fully convinced after Sunday, this recipe that the Eagles are using over the last month, they can win a title this way, 100%. Because Saquon Barkley, again, he's a running back in 2024 that has a legitimate case to win most valuable player. Do I think he will? No, I think it's going to be Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen with the numbers that Allen and Lamar putting up and what they're doing at the most important position. It's a quarterback award. But the fact that, again, it's a quarterback award and running back is so devalued in the modern day NFL, the fact that he's an MVP candidate in this reality, it's unfreaking believable. So stock up, of course, to Saquon Barkley. We'll get into stock up continued coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Skylight Frames. Missing someone this holiday season and want them to be a part of your festivities from afar? We've got the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. It's so easy to use. Setup takes less than a minute. You can invite friends and family to easily share their photos via the free Skylight mobile app or the email. You can add new photos straight from your phone from anywhere. And the touchscreen, it's a game changer on Skylight Frames. You can swipe through photos, tap to see new photos sent, tap the heart button to say thank you to the sender, and it looks beautiful in your home. Photos are displayed in HD resolution, and you can choose from 5 different frame styles. Set it up portrait or landscape mode. It's a great gift for the holidays. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, you can get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NFL. That's skylightframe.com/NFL. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NFL. And guys, today's episode of Locked On Eagles is also brought to you by America's #1 sportsbook. It's FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that $5 bet. So just take the over on Saquon Barkley rushing yards. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We are continuing stock up, stock down after a 37-20 win for the Eagles over the Rams. They are now 9-2, 7 straight wins. Just a little bit of a spoiler, there is not going to be really any stock downs on this show. Yet again, I can't really find a lot of issues with this football team. I would say maybe the only stock down is that Brandon Graham is out for the year and the edge depth is really thin. Like, the pass rush on the edge might be a concern. Like, how do you replace BG and right now Bryce Huff? It's going to have to be Josh Sweat stepping up more and taking on a big load, which I'm, snap-wise, I'm a little bit concerned with, considering last year, at the end of the year when he had to play a lot, he kind of disappeared. But I think right now with the way Sweat's playing, he should be able to carry. He's got 7 sacks, and he's red hot. Nolan Smith as well, Jalix Hunt, those 2 young kids, like they got to step up as well. But outside of that, it's a stock-up heavy episode. And we started the show talking about, of course, Saquon Barkley. I mean, the stock is through the roof with him. But I would also say stock up to just the entire operation that is this Eagles offensive line. And that includes, of course, all 5 of your starting linemen, your backups even, like Tyler Steen and Fred Johnson. But it also includes Jeff Stoutland and Howie Roseman. It is incredible that the Eagles, my entire life, I'm 27 going on 28 years old, knock on wood, but I have never known the Eagles with a bad offensive line. In fact, my entire life, basically, they've been a top 5, top 10 offensive line. It's insane how easily this franchise replaces Trey Thomas and then replaces Jason Peters. Oh, you missed both of those potential Eagles Hall of Famer, and for Peters, Pro Football Hall of Famers, here's Jordan Mailata. We turned a rugby player into an All-Pro. Oh no, Jason Kelsey's gone, the best center of all time maybe. Here's Cam Jurgens. This team doesn't skip a beat. Brandon Brooks gone. Isaiah Malu cashes in free agency. No worries. Here's Cam Jurgens last year. Oh, he goes to center to replace Kelsey. No worries. Here's Mekhi Becton, a tackle bust that's now playing like an all-pro at right guard. I mean, it's unbelievable. And then there's just Lane Johnson doing his thing. For an NFL team to consistently flip generational talent on the offensive line and replace them with stars or just as good replacements, if not better sometimes, I mean, they're never winning in spite of a starting lineman. And Landon Dickerson's been a stud at left guard, and that's normally the weaker spot of the Eagles line. Not anymore, not with number 69. Like, when you point to reasons why the Eagles have been one of the most consistent winners of the 21st century, the main reason you have to point to is that they have so much consistency on the offensive line, that there's been so many different iterations of this unit, but no matter who is on this football team up front, they're one of the best teams in football at every position up front in the trenches. And that has a lot to do with, again, the players, of course, performing on the field, but Jeff Stoutland, Howie Roseman, this is the best team in the NFL when it comes to evaluating offensive line talent and developing that talent. So stock up to the entire offensive line. I mean, they really did. It's like Howie and Stoutland have been in the garage, right? Building the frame of a beautiful sports car. And that's the offensive line. And they just really needed that engine to make it go. And they found that. Like, they found that for sure with Saquon Barkley. Stock up as well to Eagles defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, who continues to own the Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay type of offense. And early on, it didn't look great. Matt Stafford was in his bag. So was Kyron Williams. Sean McVay, it looked like he was going to have a day as a play caller. Those first two possessions, the Rams gained 123 total yards. The rest of the way, on 9 possessions combined, they only gained 167 total yards. It is such a breath of fresh air to see an Eagles defensive coach adjust in game. I used to lose my mind watching Jim Schwartz, Jonathan Gannon, Sean Desai, week after week, play after play, see something's clearly not working and never change and never adjust. Vic Fangio, I'm so surprised, honestly. I shouldn't be surprised, but I wasn't like the biggest Fangio fan when they brought him in. I was wondering if this defense was figured out in the NFL. I was nervous about those comments from Holland and Miami about Fangio not relating to the players and kind of being almost like, he made him sound like a tyrant. But he's been the perfect coach for this defense, and it's right now the best defense in football. Vic Fangio locked down that offense after 2 possessions, and he deserves so much credit for having such a young unit that's brand new, just clicking on all cylinders. And a lot of that, though, on Sunday was because of the defensive line. Stock up to Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, all getting sacks in that game. Milton had 2 on the day. That pass rush, that's how you beat a Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan-like offense, especially with a Matt Stafford. You have to dictate terms up front. You have to take over in the trenches, and that's what the defensive line did, and that started with BG, and it's why it's so sad to see him go down, and watching him break down into tears on WIP this morning, it made me cry too, I'm not going to lie. I mean, that was one of the best performances Brandon Graham's had in his career, and for that to maybe be his last game, while it's awesome to see him go out swinging it and playing like an elite player, you wanted him to finish this season. It's so tough, but he was the main reason you won that game. Like, his sack on the 3rd drive, like, that really set the tempo. And then Josh Sweat gets one. Milton Williams hits home twice. Jalen Carter's double-teamed 80% of the time, but was still an absolute menace. I mean, it just shows the reputation he has around the league now as one of the best linemen in the entire NFL. That defensive line, again, the secondary has been the best unit of this defense this year, and moving forward now with BG injured, you're going to have to win because of your 2nd and 3rd level of the defense, the linebackers, the corners, the safeties, also the interior of the defensive line. But against the Rams, like, you won because of your front 4, 100%. Like, they were special on Sunday. So stock up to the Eagles defensive line. We'll get into more stock ups coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free online courses, including the Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. All right, we are wrapping up this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, recapping the 37-20 win for the Birds in Los Angeles over the Rams. 7 straight wins now. They were 2-2. They seemed kind of dead in the water that early in the season, and since the bye week, they have ripped off 7 straight wins. It's because of the passing attack, the rushing attack, the pass defense, the run defense, the coaching. This team is clicking on all cylinders in all 3 phases: coaching, the front office. It's a well-oiled machine right now. So want to continue with stock up to some more underrated performances from Sunday. And it's crazy to say that a 6-reception game for over 100 yards and a touchdown is an underrated, quiet performance. But because of Saquon's historic night, A.J. Brown's huge day went not unnoticed, but it was the most quiet, dominant performance that I've probably ever seen. I mean, A.J. Brown was so good on Sunday. He had over 65 yards. He had plus 65 yards over expected. Again, 6 catches, over 100 yards, and a touchdown. Like, is that not the quietest performance of that magnitude that you've seen? Because, again, Saquon had 302 yards from scrimmage. A.J. Brown now, by the way, he's at plus 286 when it comes to over expectation yardage. So he has 286 yards over expected. Only Jamar Chase has more in the NFL. I know that Saquon Barkley right now is an MVP candidate, but you could almost make the case that A.J. Brown is more valuable than Saquon to this offense, because Saquon takes an already great run game to a historic level. So he's definitely elevating the run game. Duh, right? But A.J. Brown, without A.J. Brown, this passing attack, as much as I love Devontae Smith and think he's a top 10 receiver in football, without A.J. Brown, this passing offense is normally pedestrian. It can be good at times, but never great. A.J. Brown is the engine that makes this passing game run. They are 8-0 with A.J. Brown in the lineup this year. They're 1-2 without him. So, again, the rest of the passing attack, Dotson was disappointing on Sunday, Johnny Wilson, even Dallas Goedert didn't have a super great game. But A.J. Brown just quietly doing his thing. He's got 700 yards this year, 4 touchdowns. He's averaging, almost 100 yards a game. Just quietly doing his thing. Like, he's used to this. This is what he did in Tennessee, too. When Derrick Henry was the rushing king, A.J. Brown quietly would just put up dominant numbers. And he is one of the most valuable players, not just to the Eagles, but in the entire NFL. Again, Saquon, if there was a non-quarterback MVP award, Saquon would win it. But you could make a damn good case, if you're just talking about value in a vacuum, that A.J. Brown is one of, if not the most valuable players in the NFL that is not a quarterback. And again, just a quietly dominant performance. 6 catches, over 100 yards, and a touchdown, and felt like nobody really even noticed. So stock up to wide receiver 1. And then on defense, a couple underrated performances. Stock up to Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean, 8 tackles on the night, 2 tackles for a loss, a sack, and 2 quarterback hits. They're going to need that production to continue from Nakobe going downhill, because now that Brandon Graham is out for the year, Bryce Huff still 3 weeks to go on that short-term IR designation with that wrist injury. So they got another month to go until Bryce Huff can play. How do you replace that production? You need Josh Sweat to be even better than he's already been. Same with Nolan Smith. Jalix Hunt has to step up in a much bigger role. But you're not going out there and bringing in any new edge rushers to help, right? This is who you have is who you have. The trade deadline is passed. How do you make up for some of that pass rushing production you lose from BG and Huff? I think part of it's the linebackers getting to the quarterback. It's Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean getting downhill, and that's what Nakobe does best. When he blew up that running back, I don't know if it was Corum or Kyron Williams, but they did not get to Nakobe fast enough, and he ran through them and then got eventually his third sack of the year. 2 tackles for a loss as well. Like, he's been a lot better in coverage this year that he's getting credit for, but when Nakobe's going downhill, when he can just pin his ears back and go, that's when he's great. And the Eagles, like, quietly are getting everything and more that they expected from Cooper DeJean when they stole him in the 3rd round of that 2022 draft. Like, it took a few years, but you're getting George and Cooper DeJean right now, and it's an underrated story. Like, he is, again, all eyes are on Zach Baun because he's playing like Fred Warner every week. I mean, he's been as good, if not better, than Fred Warner this year. But Cooper DeJean just quietly having a really, really good year, and that's massive for the Eagles because I was ready to label him a bust in the summer. I was ready to say, okay, it's Jeremiah Trotter Jr. time and maybe Devin White. And nope, Cooper DeJean, George and Cooper DeJean, like, he is back. One more stock up here to rookie cornerback Cooper DeJean, who had a really tough assignment. He had maybe the toughest assignment and maybe the most important one of anybody in that game against the Rams because he's the slot corner against 2 of the best route runners in football, in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. And why it's more difficult for him than a Quinyon Mitchell or a Darius Slay or Isaiah Rodgers. Cooper's got to cover 2 elite route runners that in the slot have the inside and the outside of the field to work with. Like, those choice routes for Nacua and Kupp, that's lethal. It's one of the most difficult routes to stop and difficult players to stop is Nacua and or Kupp inside the numbers. And DeJean only let up a little over 40 yards on the day, had 2 big pass deflections on Nacua and Kupp, one on 3rd down against Kupp where he ran that inside and out choice route. DeJean stays with him and punches the ball out. Same with that route on Nacua in the second half on the right sideline. Like, I've been watching those reps over and over because we say teach tape all the time on this podcast. It is literally teach tape of how to play slot corner. I mean, he is so smooth, Cooper DeJean that is, in and out of his breaks. And I got to give him credit. His short area explosiveness, like his lateral agility, it's way better than I thought. I thought he was more of a up-down speed kind of corner, but I was kind of nervous when he plays those twitchier receivers in the slot. Can he be that guy, or is he more of a safety hybrid that covers linebackers, or I should say tight ends, more than a fast receiver or running back? I don't know. I mean, he could stay with the best of the best. Like, those are 2 of the twitchiest slot receivers in football, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, and DeJean was with them all day. So DeJean quietly having again, if Quinyon Mitchell wasn't dominating the way he is this year and Jared Verse wasn't either, DeJean would be, maybe even if he started with those 2 added to the equation, if Cooper started all 17 games this year, he'd have a good case for Rookie of the Year. If he could get, the only thing is with Quinyon and Cooper, they don't have the turnover numbers, and that's what really wins the award, unfortunately. It's sacks and it's interceptions, like it's the sexy stats, if you will. And they don't have that, but they have everything else. DeJean is playing like a Rookie of the Year candidate for sure. The entire defense is just clicking. Again, that's a really, the Rams are 5-6, and they might not seem like much, but that's an underrated team in my opinion. Like, Matt Stafford is still a top 3 quarterback in the NFC. Sean McVay is one of the best play callers in football. Kyron Williams is a very underrated running back. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are one of the best wide receiver duos in football, and they held them to under, after those first 2 drives, less than 200 yards from scrimmage. Just so impressive. And because of it, the Eagles are 9-2, and they're riding a 7-game win streak. Up next, though, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. It's Baltimore week. We'll move on to that next show on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, getting you covered. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen and watch each and every day. That'll do it for today's show. As always, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening. And let's go, Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.